Ground secreting to adaptation lines of surface applications to its position lines of power generates a correlation setting how we surface lines of triangulation and all lines its position location to its system through performance. All direct lines of calculation lines of the body framing track location to its vessel now is line setting location at 12,000 lines of feet above and track calculates the observation decks, hollow decks into dockings. All lines of all communication is now its vessel communications. I set a declaring call for the avatars to report. Now that reports the cycles and core track location to the system. It's all levels of balance. Balance in the mind, balance in location in the brain, location is the heart, location in the lines of the soul, location to the system. But the vessel, once it reaches a high lines of frequencies, a high lines of altitude, lines of communication to its system, it immediately starts to understand how to identify its own system and what's going on. Because it's reaching higher levels. It's like, okay, I understand what's happening now. I understand the vessel. I understand what's going on in the vessel. I understand the vessel's a pod. I understand it's a hosted intelligence. Let me say that again. Your body is here. Okay? Your body is a formations. Okay? It's a connections to for intelligence. So what that means is basically, if you're not in control of your system, and I say they is a process of teleportation. Home lines, energy lines, existence lines, and Y lines of factor. Track location X, Y, Z lines, communication X, Y. Direct lines of modification to its telelocation setting when it comes into the acronyms. Track location lines and high core track interference line position location embryo. Direct lines of modification lines and core track interference location of DNA track regulation and 12 foundation graph calculations. It's a direct lines and AI line communication to position of its process. Setting lines of communication system to all levels of travel. Bouncing this location to its conscious location to its awareness is truly understand what the vessel is doing in track location to its systems. I'm starting to understand how to identify that now. I understand what the intelligence is trying to do. I understand what the vessel is now. It's a host for the intelligence to navigate through. And that's all it is. That's why you have a body. The body is the outline. It's a core track with location. So it's like a shadow line, screen lines, adaptation lines. It's a suit. It's a plasma screen lines, adaptation lines, a surface. Now that tracks lines that communicates inside calculation lines, how you basically see yourself from inside the spectrum and outside calculation lines of space. Direct lines of modification lines of space and time. Now that puts lines of provision location to cycles. But the more you identify the higher levels of what your body and your vessel is in track location system, is once you understand how to identify that, then you're identifying yourself. You're understanding you through all formation locations. You understand that the actual body that I am in is nothing but a host for intelligence. And I keep saying that until you get balanced with yourself. It's not understanding the vessel, it's understanding you inside the vessel. That's what you got to understand. It's the body understanding the body of inside. You have to understand that you're in a body that is a vessel to navigate the intelligence. Your bodies are hosts for the intelligence. And once you start identifying that, you're identifying the intelligence as soon as you touch things. Because everything around you is in its own property. Okay, it's in its perfection. But as soon as you touch it, you're changing the properties of its intelligence. And that calculation lines. And if you don't identify what your body is, you're going to have a very hard time understanding your attraction, location, divisions. Getting lines of communication lines to know exactly how to use your senses, all of your sensories, that puts on lines of all communication sending to you and process to understand that. All right. So you have to identify why you have a body. And once you identify that, then you understand what it means to be online. Oh my gosh, I understand what that means now. I got my Wi-Fi, modem, satellite, connecting lines, some locations connecting to motherboard, track location, earth line, communication lines, power location, generation line, communication highways, track calculation line screens. I understand that now. It's starting to make more sense. So people are becoming more consciously aware of what's happening with them inside. Starting to recognize something's not right, something doesn't feel right, something never feels right, because it's not me through identifications. Even though I see myself in a body. And it becomes an A body to a the body to all levels of a communication to a synchronized agile track location to your body. It's your body. It's you. Operations of unifications of wide line screen. All lines at H line, screen lines, adaptation lines, and location of your systems. Now you're starting to identify who and what you came from and where you are in track locations. When this happened, where this happened, who this happened. That all comes lines of how, right? To what, you know? So it's all about understanding. I'm trying to get you guys a basic example because the body itself is at a higher lines frequency now. It's no longer a 10,000 below deck. It has to be at a certain line and setting in set locations so the avatar can really understand how to navigate at a higher level, right, with the body itself, so it can navigate the system and take over its vessel communication. Now, once it takes over the vessel communications, you're online and track locations, you have a better connection with yourself, and you're starting to identify, wow, I really understand what's going on. My vessel is nothing but a host for the intelligence. So I have to find a way to get in configuration of relationship and positional partnership. You already have the friendship, but you need the relationship and the partnership, right? Now this goes out to all communication lines. Once they get activated, screen lines, adaptation. Activation is an act upon. It's a track location lines and settings. So you're already been activated. You're already in the VR system. Now you have to identify what your body really is in space and time, okay? So that's going to help you and guide you in a lines of communication setting, positional location to system. Hold on. Okay, so once we identify that line, it gets a lot more easier in track location unit settings. Now you guys have a quiz on Tuesday, which is based on the test rec. How to use the test rec is understanding what a test rec is to your systems because it's different from everybody else. The one thing that doesn't change in any way in formation locations of Earth, powers, atmospheres, or anything or highways is you're constantly traveling. Okay, you're constantly traveling. You're always traveling. You never stop traveling. Your traffic flow never stops. Okay, it's like in a position location where an engine just keeps running and running and running and running and running and running and running, right? But with an engine line of a car, it stops, right? Because you have traffic lights and outlines and high interference. So once you identify that, it gets a lot more easier. And then you realize, wow, I can slow down. Wow, I can speed up. Wow, I can pause. Wow, I can edit. Wow, I can bend space. Wow, I can freeze space. Wow, I can stop my space. All right. So you have to be a certain level of consciousness to understand more lines of you in space and how to use that through modification system. But it all starts with your body is nothing but a vessel of communications for the intelligence to use. And when I say intelligence, I'm saying the actual intelligence. Okay, until you identify that, you have to identify yourselves, why you're here, purpose and existence. We've been through that before. So if you get a triangulation line screen and directs one of modification cycles and generates some lines of calculation screen locations, one center communications, let's simply go through tractions. Let's let line centers and track location settings, triangulation split. Triangulation line condition setting process, right? So we get an alpha line equals lines in one position equals line correlation lines of box location. Then we got a delta line wave. Delta communication setting and travel with line conditions high center interference in position location at alpha, line conditions on line high interference into mic. Okay, and then we get a position location lines of mega and position location lines, communication lines of papa. Sets communication line, track location line conditions setting a kilo and calculation line screen location. All through triangulation, right? So that identifies lines of singularity and position lines of high coordinate track location. Position lines at all lines, process calculation of 1, 2, and 3 track location. Okay, X2000 comes in, picks up platform's line condition setting, all lines of high operation, and track location lines, alpha delta, line rotation surface attraction. Direct lines of signals, cross line signals, line communications process, 4 lines of split, sets communication lines, solar generation line screens, application of solar sail, and track location. Okay, now this is all through alpha, delta, theta. It's all line communications. Alpha, Bravo, Papa, Kilo, Mike, Romeo, Foxtrot, Charlie. Any of that line position location travels. Now the body has to really identify that in lines of communication to position and process. This puts lines in more communication settings of travel. Points lines of graph communication setting the solar sail. Directs lines of communication system. So the body now in line position location is at 12,000 line screen. 12,000 lines to location lines of Earth equals location line condition center higher self location lines of home, track calculation lines into VR system, and track location lines into echo chamber. Echo Zooler 1 platform to C lines according to track location setting to docking lines and set correlations in 1, 2, and 3 track location. knowing exactly where you are in provision, right? And then you got platforms 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 locations. All right. Direct lines of modification over cross line signals in platforms 1, 3, and 4, lines of 6, lines of 8, and track location lines of delta highways and travel position alpha mega line position. Complicated stuff, right? Off the directions. So understanding the platform is the communication setting how you see Earth line at track location, right? At direct lines of modification lines, constant communication lines, direct lines of high center interference of tubing, and line position locations, traction locations, hologram. Direct lines modification of platforms, setting lines of 2, 3, and set locations. Process communication lines, adaptation lines of surface traction. Powerful stuff, isn't it? So it really helps when you understand how to use perspective, understand location settings, coordinates, connection lines of box frame, triangulation frames. But the team has to understand how to use their Voltronic location setting to more lines of calculate lines, understand more lines in the vessel, puts lines of communication lines of theta, line condition setting, position of its process, that puts all communication with its earth, its powers, and its applications, and its highways and track locations. Once the highway comes in, 3 lines of weather, line of setting location of 4 track location, provision lines of cycles. Comes in line communication type position process. Okay? Getting that ground line is knowing exactly how to surface lines of traction and application in your systems. Now, the test direct is based on the Metatronic cube line. Let's go through a line connection to box square, triangulation lines, high position process. Lines communication settings, process calculations, crossing line signals, line communication setting interference, what position lines of travel in line communication system. Now you go through triangulation line conditions how you want to have the test direct and line conditions set interference in process of communication. Right? So it's always different ways to see it. Platforms ground, platform powers, platform atmospheres, and track location. Right? Direct lines circulation and rotation lines, spring lines adaptation. All right. Process lines, platforms, setting lines, centers, and cross locations, cross line cages and grounds, and 4 set locations. Or process line conditions, up line, swing line, and 4 line communication. Direct lines modification. So what you're doing with the test direct is you're building lines in inventory and traffic and a faster flow of direction of time sequence. Puts lines of process and higher lines of communication system, how to use that in realms and all lines of inventory and track location and settings and travel. But it's all cross communication setting to all levels of operation surface and track location system and calculation. So you're expanding your webbing system around line captain setting on outlines of course set location setting. Okay. So it's just all levels of expansion. Expanding lines of center, operation lines of surface and track location. Okay. Expanding the platforms and communication lines and mass of its equation. It's amazing when you get into higher lines of dimension location setting of space and time modulation screen locations. Okay, you're expanding out through the energetic dome. Okay, so that's always there. The only thing that positions you in the lines of expansion of mass is longitude and latitude. So this is always here. This is actually your Earth, guys. But the center core system, once it spins its circulation rotation, this is what it looks like. So your actual Earth is a spherical sphere that's spinning in rotation cycles in track location. Right? So it is a sphere in space. Okay, once it reaches a certain frequency. It's spinning so fast, it has no measure, no scale, no balance. See, it doesn't address anything until it sees things. So you actually, Earth changes. So that means your body changes. Your body changes in the mechanism location of travel, which means it changes the temperature reading. It changes the course of space and time. It changes the clocking system. It changes your foundations. It changes your structures. It changes your divisions. It changes your dimensions. It changes your sky nets. It changes your sky grids. It changes your coloration. It changes your lights. It changes your track location system. It changes your brain frequency patterns. It changes your alpha, delta, and theta waves. It changes your mind adaptation system. It changes the core set location of your settings through observation. Okay? Now, once you understand that, the actual sphere gets bigger and bigger over time. Okay, so you come the bandwidth of the atmosphere, of your Earth, of your water, of your fire, and all track location, your heart and track location. Okay, so just trying to get you guys to understand that, because reaching those levels, then you understand what a test direct really does. Okay, so the center source location, start with attractions, right? That doesn't leave. The only thing that leaves is platforms. The only thing that leaves is platforms. It gets bigger and bigger through expansion. So that's all this is in track location. It's very simple, very easy, very direct in position. All right. So you're expanding your platforms now. Understanding what's going on through space modulation, right? That doesn't leave. All lines its communication to its energetic dome, and track location just gets bigger, right? So it gets bigger. Your platitude lines in communication system. This is you, and this is you in track locations, right? Now, the line condition high center interference. This is where it gets really interesting applications. 144 platform is there in track location of your settings, right? So there's 3 provision cycles. Ground centers of you. Okay, this is lines of 12,000 feet. Okay, that's 12,000 feet, right? 12,000 feet and 3 track location of 4 line cycles. Track to its communication lines, high center interference, cross line communication lines of 8 lines of cycles. Lines of communication lines, energetic dome, and track location. That's you in the grounds, that's you in the powers, and this is you in the atmosphere line screen adaptation and calculations. All right. So the 3 lines of communication settings in your system. Okay, 3 different levels. All right. Ground powers lines, 0, 1s attractions, 0, 2 lines of settings, and 3 lines of communication. So process lines, calculation lines, 0, 1s, 0, 1s, 0, 1s. Okay, and then it goes into 0, 2s. All right, and then it goes into 0, 3s. That's where the body's now in track location lines. Into lines of the hangars, location setting in console. Okay, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. All right, that's where they are. All right, so you start at 12,000 line and set location and settings. Now that puts all lines that communicates the setting. So the ground line has a 12-foot line, all right, 12 feet, all right, 1,200 feet, okay, which is the power generation line screen to the energetic dome. So the actual meta bed gets bigger. That's the meta bed right here, boom. So it just gets bigger in expansion. And then you get it in position location 1,200. Then you go into 1,200,000 in track location, right? All through bedding, right? Bedding through lines of calculation lines is the default line of screen that puts lines of communications back in track location settings of where you are in line condition setting to remote, right? So 12 feet, 1,200 feet, 1,200,000 feet, all through your body, right? So it's really interesting once you understand how to use the primer, the position lines of track location lines of space in between, sets lines of communication setting. Let's get that in the bold. So it cancels out everything information, location, and ground settings and traction. Okay, see how that comes in now? It's going to get complicated now, right? Because we're going through wave cycles here. And track location lines, the dimension lines, a high core track line, position location to its system, all through diamond core and track location. Okay. So getting that measured lines of core track interference, you have an energetic domes and grounds. Okay. And then you get energetic domes and calculation lines of power. And then you get energetic dome that basically processes its position. So the center operation of view of the energetic dome and the meta bed just gets bigger through a sphere, right? There's their torical lines of communications, right? Their torical fields. Sets communication lines of travels in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 locations. Set correlation lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 set locations and settings. That's 12 set locations, right? So the metric meters of the scale lines and communication lines of the energetic dome changes communications. Now we're at configuration lines of blue cycles, setting line communications and ground cycles, setting communication lines of atmosphere cycles, 3 lines of communications, right? Then we go into the red line, circle line coordinate setting instructions, over across location setting cancels out lines communication position of its program. Directs lines modification cloak and dagger, sets line communication center of communication setting and process, puts all communication lines configuration. Direct lines modification coming there through equation line conditions, all through configuration of face recognition. See the face? That's how it's done through equation, right? So it's really interesting where the bodies are now, okay? Through all calculated modified, all right? And it's all through platforms. It's just to understand how to walk through lines, how to fly, and how to levitate. So the body is now in a configuration lines observation decks. They have to get in their dockings. They have to get in their observation location system. So the only thing that's expanding now is the mind of consciousness. Sets correlation lines of 1, in position of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4. Right? So here, setting core track location. Right? So platforms here in position of 1, 2, 3. So we've got 1 indicates lines of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4 set locations. All right. All right. So it's like a shell, right? So the shell just gets bigger in bandwidth and width and line condition setting, direct and redirect and correlations. But you got platforms of 45 and connected to the ground center location system, right? So you're always going to start with lines of, if you're not at 12 feet, you're at 24. If you're not at 24, you're at 48 feet. If not, you're at 72 feet or you're at 144 platform and track location, right? That's where your body is in configuration lines and ground lines of the earth and track location. Setting communication lines of high center interference 144. Again, calculation 72, position of 48, and line condition setting 24, and line conditions at 12, right? So this is where you stay in provision lines of cycles. You don't go below 12,000 feet. So 12,000 feet is location setting. Anything below 10,000 deck, right? You're going to be off calculations. The core track location line condition setting is going to process this line of circulation rotation going in the opposite location setting of travel. It sets communication lines in med bed that processes communications to RS line signal offline communication setting location of travel. Off communication, right? So you got to get a direct line link back into platform of 144, process communications back in center of operation line calculation. It gets position lines and setting lines of 72, position 48, 24, and 12 qualification system. So anything below 12,000 deck is not what you want to do. You want to stay above the 144. Staying above line 144, plasma and line screen adaptation lines are going forward at track location. Sun comes in line set location to its moon, lines its calculation lines, part of accelerated lines its communication process that directs lines of communication setting, opens all signal location system and travel, and puts all lines of communication setting at travel. Okay, see intelligence? Boom. All right, very powerful stuff. All right, so it's getting more complicated now because the bodies are going to highline division now, okay, through forming these equations, right? So let's go through triangulation lines, split lines, 1x line 1, and position x line 2, and to position lines across lines equals lines of 1 track location in 1 box. How does that equal lines of core track location? So box equal correlation lines into communication equals lines of question and travel, okay? So it's all about understand the question line screen, because that's the answer. Track location is infinity 8. 8 line rotation surface and track location lines that sets a perimeter and parameter lines of cycles in set calculations. 8 center core system, plasma generation lines, energetic dome screen location. Time by equation, right? That's how it works. So anything with a question lines and infinity 8 line rotation that spins the cycles on its flywheel. That track location line settings, sets lines communication setting position of its program. Direct lines modification lines, cross line condition setting, and 3 lines of tethers in communication. Calculate, modify, balance lines, cross location setting, box equals lines of core track location provision. Sets communication lines of cycles generation. All right. So I'm just showing you exactly how the condition of the body has to really understand the mechanism of what it's doing. The avatar is now in full cycle and to their communication setting, controlling the consoles and communication to its body frame. Track to its communication lines to its vessel frame. There's lines of communication lines to its central frame. Lines of communication to its main frame, circuit frame, correlation frame, track frame, CPU frame. There's a direct lines of communication setting that all lines of communication to a system that we really have to identify why we are bodies inside our systems, right? When I say inside our systems, I'm talking about the intelligence. It's the intelligence taking all lines of all communications to understand you in track locations. And the only way to understand yourself is through telepathy. Using that lines of communication setting, then you understand the platforms, how to surface to that. You understand the indicate line, communications, arrows, indicate lines, center location system, travel lines, rotation, surface, and track location. Direct and redirect, right? Platform communications, indirect signals. Comes to all lines of communication, right? Sets correlation lines, intelligence. See, all of intelligence. It's easy. Everything's a configuration of face line. So it really understands location of pi generation screen line. How you correlate that, communicate to a system all through travel. It's going line beyond recognition lines. I put a very powerful video to know exactly how to go through 4. Right? How do you go through 4? Through 1, 2, 3, and position of 4 panels. How do we go through 4 lines of communications? Cross line signals, flux over 1, flux over 2, and track location. Direct lines, flux over down, cross line condition setting. Process lines of center core system, travel line, rotation of energy line communication and position of process. cross lines of 1, cross lines of 2, cross lines of 3, cross lines of 4 of metabed and traction. So in that lines of communication setting, teams come into the lines of communication, lines of expansion and travels in the rotation surface interaction. Direct lines of platforms, line setting location, how to use that in line communication setting to travel. Okay, all through 4. Right? This is an indication of a powerful line screen and high interference all through 4 indication. You see the antenna? So it's line of communication. There you go, communication, right? Oh, look at this, energetic ball. Look at that, intelligence. See it now? See the intelligence? Wow, look at that. Let's color that in. There's the intelligence. Boom. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. There's the intelligence. Boom. See it? Right? All right. So the track lines of communication setting. Now I'm going to get you guys a lot more confused now. The actual meta bed is your cloud. Okay. Now recognizing that communication is the VR setting that all aligns its communication to position its process, but understand your cerebral cortex is to understand the mystical cortex that's given to you through sim cortex. It's a track location lines of provision. The binary and the transistors and resistors puts lines of communication lines how to use that through its traffic of its inventory, through its flow. Recognizing that communication through its position of its process communication system. So you're expanding the line calculation, longitude and latitude in line communication clouds. Directing that lines to communicate to its position of process. The communicate line is the constellation. Putting all that line in all lines of highest interference is really recognizing its intelligence and all information location of the system. All right. So I really want you to really pay attention now what's going on through your settings. It's a lot more easier once you identify your body as nothing but a vessel of communication for the intelligence to use. And I keep saying that until you guys understand what that is, what that means. What does that mean to you? Am I balancing me, or am I trying to understand the balance of its intelligence that's given inside me? How do I use that information? How do I understand the cup? How do I understand the central systems of the cup? How do I understand the operation of the cup? The cup location system. Let's go through lines of configuration, lines of calculations. Direct lines modifications. Let's go through this line connection. I'm just going to do a basic ground centers and to its operation cycle. And it's got a Fibonacci that goes in the same direction. It has to go in the same direction. You can't look at the cup and go in the opposite direction because it affects the energy line signature. Right? Because this is that is this, but this is a copy. This is an imprint. This is a calculate modify. It's lines calculation lines and high center interference. So you're copy and paste and that position location. So you can't really take the foundation of its properties. All you can do is copy and paste. Change the length, the communication to its algorithm. Change the binary location to its position of its program, direct line signals. So in that lines of communication, now that cup is just moved, right? Because it knows exactly what I'm going to do next and travel in point lines of graph. Oh, it's moved again, see? So it's moving lines of 3, lines of 4 set locations, right? Setting communication lines of 1, setting communication lines of 2, setting communication lines of 3, contraction. Blah, right? So it's pretty amazing. The actual cup it moved itself. Pretty powerful stuff. But it's in the same angle point location setting. So it's at the same frequency line screen. I just changed the adaptation and the cup itself has moved its mind system and travel. Right? If I go to the opposite cycle and do this lines of communication, it changes the correlation lines of abstractions and directions and calculation. Okay? So it's really powerful when you start to identify all lines of communications, guys. How you use that in tractions, right? Anything that you change on this cup changes everything in fraction, changes everything in its properties. Okay? So it's very important you understand the light signatures. All right? There's a light signature line. You see it? Where's the light signature? Right there, right? There's the light signature, right? That's the binary. That's the primer right there. See, that's the primer. It doesn't have to be in the center. It's here. So it's got the configuration lines of truth and false narratives because it has a direct line link. Now the process, now if you look really close, you can see the space. See the space in between of the cup? As soon as I flash it in light, has a track location lines of 6, in line position location of 9. Get activated line, space-time operation, right? The cup is on the line communication on the right side, not on the left. Now if I turn on the track location line condition setting, it's all lines of communication on left over right. That changes the communication. But what doesn't change the primer is the center core system, which is on the same traction and direction. So it doesn't matter how I spin it, you're always going to see the primer exactly where it's left off in traction. See, there's the primer. The light doesn't have to be here. It's a factor's core track location where it is in provision lines of cycles. And the generation screen lines adaptation to the surface. It's all lines of communication setting that factors over pi. So as I understand location, what teams has to understand locations of interactions. Understanding your programmers of your programming settings. Know exactly how you're doing these things through platforms, right? Let's go again in basic ground side location system, right? Let's go through box. Let's travel the box in a 3 cycle. Overlapping 4 line cycles. Overlapping 6 lines of cycles in traction locations. That's line security, line defense lines of communication. Complicated stuff, right? Data formation lines of 1 tractions, indirect cross-line signals, and 1/3 of the line graph. Sets communication lines of 2 graphs, line conditions over cross location of string lines of graph. Very confusing, right? But it's very powerful. So this is about understanding how to put this in lines of calculation, screen lines, adaptation lines. Let's go through your plasma screen lines adaptation location to your system. Okay. Sets lines of communication lines, cross line conditions, high center interference, in line position location of its operation, over cross location of screen lines of box. See, it's getting tricky now, right? That's the optical illusion. That's what your body's doing. It's changing its mechanism location of space and time through travel. So you're in control of it, or the intelligence is. So the intelligence is changing the frame. It's changing the grounds, the powers, atmospheres of you every second, every minute, every hour. That track to its position, location to its system, all lines that calculate modify, that changes all line signals to your system. How through travel. Very confusing, right? So getting in a direct line link has a data formation platform. Platforms connect line highest interference and Wi-Fi and satellites and modem inter-application lines of data that process communication ground centers. Setting communication lines at high core track interference. Ground centers lines of 2 settings. Process lines of 4 set location of travel. Process lines according to lines of platforms 1, platforms 2, and C set location. Calculate modify X2000 comes into platform. Another X2000 comes in platform and docks in track location. Very powerful stuff, isn't it? So once it sends lines of communication lines, the actual brain itself expands the mind lines of correlation lines of graphs and communication lines of cycles. Sets lines of communication settings in 1, 2, 3, and traffic and flow and inventory line screen, adaptation lines of surface, and track location. Complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun, right? So that's where everybody has to really get control over the bodies now, because the connections to the avatar line screen knows exactly what's going on through its setting and understands its operation, understands its surface, and knows exactly why it's inside your vessel. Getting control of your vessel is getting control of the line communication, your dynamics, getting control of your geometric lines, operation lines, of cycles, generation screen lines. So anything you touch, you're automatically changing the properties of its set design through its intelligence. All right, so let's go through platforms and setting. Let's go through online communications, right? Platform 1, platform 2, platform 3, right? Pretty basic, right? Then you get a solar screen, adaptation lines of solar sail and track location. Oh, look at that. Then you got water and communication to a system off the water containment screen. Then you get a platform communication line, earth line, track line, communication line, position operation lines of surface. Changes communication line flux, 3 lines of communication lines of travel. Points lines of graph, center core system, and travel position point lines of communication and directions, right? This is all taken over for your body. Your body is changing the metric meters of its solar matters in 2 waving cycles and set locations and travel, right? So that's what's happening with your body. Are you aware of what's going on with your body? Is the question. Your body is changing shapes. It's changing metric meters and scales and balance. It's constantly traveling in line communication setting and line communication interference. If you get a travel line center location setting, box triangulation, right? Box equals triangulation, triangulation equals box. See how that works? Box equals triangulation. Oh, triangulation equals box. See how what I did there? Now, over cross location lines, that's direct and redirect. Select line, chord setting, line position locations. One center core system and going in the same directions in the 3 line cycles and track location. All right. So that lines of communication lines. It's about understanding how to bring the box in a waving cycles and 3 travel, in positional cross-line signals and the 3 line communication lines of triangulation of travel, process communication on platforms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 locations of setting. all process communications. Tether lines, 3 lines of course, setting line condition setting process. Process lines, platforms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 location setting. All right. It's all done through configuration of face recognition. See the intelligence inside? Boom. All right. So all the connection is in travel lines of direct signals. The actual intelligence is just changing your formations and mutating your graph lines. It's changing your DNA structures. It changes your lines of dimensional lines of scales, lines of communication measures, scales. It's changing the pixelation, the graphs, the holograms. Every second, every minute, every hour in the calculated lines. And once you identify that, then you understand what's going on. Building that partnership knows exactly what's happening in your system. Constantly using telepathy is knowing exactly how to communicate with your avatar and at certain lines of sequence. And that lines the communication setting and all lines of high correlation setting travel into position location mind. They adapt the system location to all levels that puts everything in process of communication to the system through center operations. Okay, so we really have to identify what's happening with our travels when we get into that calculations, right, in that location system. Because the connection to the avatar is controlling the vessel so we can understand why it's inside you. Understand that core track location is provision line of the set cycles. That puts lines of communications to better communication, how to use your telepathy. Using your telepathy has a better track locations of balance. So you understand what is going on when your body is changing. It's going in position to its original design. And the avatar knows exactly what it's doing. So it's basically processing your body and putting lines of all communication that travels and recognition. All right, bringing you into position. Sun comes in, moon comes in, lines of travel, line condition setting, out of co-creation, and line condition of truth and modification setting of capsule. All track location and settings, all through configuration. All right. So hopefully you guys get a little bit more understanding now what the intelligence is doing now. And I want you to identify your body is nothing but a connection of a host that the intelligence is navigating. Once the connection is high center interference, then you understand why the avatar is in position. What is it trying to do? Well, it's trying to align your settings. It's trying to balance out your system. It's trying to understand you through mind adaptation cycles. It's trying to understand you through heart recognition setting location. It's trying to understand you through lights. It's trying to understand you through dark. It's trying to understand you through formation. It's trying to understand you through balance, right? So it's actually the intelligence that you're dealing with now. Because the position lines of track calculates lines as the higher lines of configuration location of lights. That puts all lines of communication lines of you in balance and track location. How do you see yourself in space and time? Your body frames, your correlation frames, your track frames, your CPU frames, your main frames, and location your circulatory line condition settings of balance. Getting that lines of communication processes you on so many levels and track location your settings. It's very powerful when you come in that position lines attractions. So one position location 1 times 1 equals lines of 1, right? Yes, right? But soon as it gets into power generation line, it's no longer 1 times 1. It equals 3. Because you're reaching higher levels. That's it. That's all it is. Platforms of 1, platforms of 2, platforms of 3. All through formula, all through equation, right? So 1 times 1 equals 1. Yes. 1 times 1 equals 3 in the power generation line screen, the part of accelerator, how to travel through location system. Then you get into 1 position lines of times 1 equals 1,000. See how that works? See how that works? The Earth, the powers, and the atmosphere. Right? Coordinates, communication lines, and direct signals. Then you get a position of 1, 0, 0, 0, and 4 settings. Right? Okay. So that's 1,000. Okay, track location line set location of 3 cycles. Equals lines of 4 track location of 7 divisions. Equals lines calculation lines of this question. Right? The question lines is cycle lines, highest interference, infinity, in position on infinity, in position lines infinity, and earth line rotation cycles, generation. Platforms, communication lines of triangulation line condition, triangulation line communication system. 3 platitude line screens, adaptation lines of settings, adaptation lines of settings, adaptation lines of settings, set correlations. Setting correlates an energetic dome, segregation of energetic dome line communication with grounds, powers, and the atmospheres. All 3 platforms. Okay, all through aligned communications of pi, right? So let's do that again, right? So that's what the correlation line of the avatars now, because they're echo Zulers. They're in their connection lines of Charlie, line conditions of their taxi highways. They're in their kilos, the mics, and settings, location settings area. Getting out of the lines of communication setting to travel position and point graph communication lines. Getting that in lines of calculate screen lines. So let's go through 2 times line, 2 times 1, and line condition settings 2, right? So we do it again, 2 times 1, because we're in the power line. Now we're getting online communication into mystical cortex line. So earth line, power line, atmosphere line, all right? Calculation lines, highway, 4-track division, right? All right, so 2 times 1 is 24. Okay, and if we do it again, 2 times 1, now we're adding the equation lines, equals location is 2,400 and track location. Okay, so you have to stand the earth line, you have to stand the power line, and you have to stand the atmosphere line and track locations. How this becomes this and this becomes that, right? And it's all through travel, right? So what you're doing is you're taking this and you're traveling from here out to here. Okay, so once you understand that, the position lines of 2 becomes lines of 4. 4 line becomes the lines of 3 zeros and track locations. All right, so that's 24 equals lines of all lines center location of 3 cycles, line condition lines of 4 tractions, direct lines of 7 equals lines of question and travel. Okay. That's what it is. So this can be anything. This can be anything through power, and this can be everything of its earth. So this is the configuration of balance, guys. So I'm showing you formula equations, but the team really has to understand how to process this is understand that through traffic and flow is to control your space and to control your time. How 2 times 1 is 2, right? And how 2 times 1 equals lines of 24. And then it gets higher. So you come into 1 digit, 2 digits, and 3 or 4 digits above through your formulas, through your equations, right? This is where it's lines its configuration system of travel. Let's do this again. Now, once you get into shapes, it gets a lot more complicated because you have to use it for location system and travels. Let's go through triangulation line, set correlation. Let's go through another triangulation lines of panels and correlation and track locations, all right, and directions. Okay. Then we get split lines of anomaly. Arrow indicates 1 cycle and 2 set locations, right? Then we get position lines of barometer in line condition setting and split lines of communication position of process. Direct lines of calculation lines, cross line signal and line condition setting of process communications. See the intelligence coming in? All right, so it has a direct line link, process 1, process 2, process 3, process 4, and process 5 in track location. Indicate line screen highest interference, cross line signals of 1 in position of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4, in position of 5, and track location. Okay, now you see the primer, right? So the center line condition setting is all communication to its system. There's the primer. Very complicated stuff, right? But you see the intelligence. Transformer, or then meets the eye, Autobots. All right. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand how to use lines of communication setting, sets correlation lines, track location lines. Let's go through one line position operation line cycles. So 1 times 1, okay, equals 1. So that's 1 lines of ground, right? That works, right? That works with the grounds, right? But when it's in the process of power of the lines of communication lines, it changes the metric meters of space and time. So the process gets in a higher lines of communications, the consciousness of its awareness, of its mind adaptation, of its surface. The process all communicates to its primer, to its traffic, to its flow, to its inventory, to its binary transistors, resistors, how you use your thoughts, your actions, and your motion that tracks its communication system of travel. So 1 times 1 equals 1 on the grounds, yes. But once you reach the powers, it changes lines of calculation, lines its formation location to its inventory. So that's lines of communication of 1 inginent in location of 2 inginents. So that lines of communication lines of process, lines of communication lines of highest interference into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sets lines of communication lines of highest interference in position of 2 tracks in 3, 4, and 5 set locations. Now the process communication line high derivation lines, 1 times line condition settings of 4 equals lines of 5. Right? So that's where it gets some high correlations down because you're getting higher levels of balance. All right, so 1 times 4 equals 5. See, this 5 line indicates system through the primer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? All right, so then we go to higher line condition setting. So the primer itself comes in a higher line divisions. Now you're working with the atmospheres. So it's that line communications. So we get in cross location settings. How many lines of configuration line screens do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so get lines of communication lines high communication setting to travel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 track locations. That direct lines calculation lines. So it's really interesting when you come into that line communications. So 1 times 4 equals 9 in traction. Okay, so that's basically how this all works. I mean, it's just it's really a lot more understanding how you use your formulas of the grounds, where it sets position, the powers, sets the correlation, and the atmospheres sets the space and time of its highways and tractions. Okay? Powerful stuff, isn't it? So I'm just trying to get you guys to identify your formulas, equations now when it all lines as communication of grounds, powers, and atmospheres. Okay, how this is actually what it is, but this can be anything at what it wants, and this is all formation location. So you got 1 digit, 2 digit, and 1, 2, 3, 4 digits through foundation graphs in your 12 DNA, right? So everybody understand now the formula, equation, how this all works, and how you do it through equation lines in your box location settings and travels. And there's some location. Let's go through box line. You got a box communication lines around a set of locations, right? So let's go through communication lines and high position travels, right? 4 docking systems, all right? All right, so we got 4 docking systems. Track location lines. So 4 times 1 equals 4, right? Because it's a ground, right? Simple, right? So that's the earth line ground, okay? That stays in position, right? Now, we're going into the center operation and tractions, right? So it stays on 4. Unless you want to change the formula, then you have to change the program setting. You have to rewrite the system location to its travels and redirect the signal location to default that changes the copy and paste to its embedded and location to its able that lines its communications back and balance of a track of flow to its inventory set locations back and setting. But that stays in the ground. That stays in the ground. Okay, it's the earth. It's the earth rotation surface, right? 4 times 1 equals 4, right? That's the ground location. See the 4 cycles, right? 4 times 1, right? See that? 4 times 1. See? All right, so that's lines of communication lines. So we add lines of 4 track lines in highways and track locations. So that's lines that calculate lines of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So 4 times 1 equals 8 in traction. Okay, so you see how that works in the balanced lines of center? Okay, it's getting more complicated, right? But I'm just showing exactly how the formula works now. How you always use the ground line center to outline the communication to its earth. But when you get into the power line, you have to understand the data formation lines of its inventory to its location system, how you can rewrite the program locations to its hardware location to its computer operation cycle. Now, the track lines of communication lines of 1, 2, 3 platforms, calculation of 3 lines of cycles. That's 3 times lines of correlation setting. Line communication lines is 9. Okay. Correlates the highest interference, 3, 6, and 9, a travel. Okay, so sets lines of correlates the highest interference. So equals lines of 4 times 1, okay, equals lines of communication lines of 9. Okay, so it's a higher above signal, but you have to understand the process, how it works with the ground lines, the powers, and the atmospheres. How 4 times 1 equals 9. Okay, 3, 6, and 9. See, you're putting it all together through layers. Your dimension lines the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres in set locations. All through traction, guys. All through traction. All right? Now, this is all done through a tesseract. This is what a tesseract does. Okay? So the tesseract is basically understanding the grounds of its cube, right? So you got the grounds of the earth, and you got the powers and atmosphere lines generation screen. And then you got the line condition atmospheres, and then you get a 4-track location your highways, right? So you're with 1, 2, 3, and 4 platforms, right? So again, 5 times 1, okay, equals 5, right? And setting core track location, line condition, size setting. All right, so the set position of 1, that doesn't change, right? So let's go in track location line centers. Let's allocate position time frame 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations of 5, right? All right, so it sets position and travels, and we time signal lines of 1 and position 6 in line condition setting, right? So 5 times 1 equals 6. Okay, because I'm using 5 platforms over 1 cycle equals 6, right? It gets more complicated when you're in the platforms of power, because that's you through energetic line. That doesn't leave, okay? So this is platform 1, platform 2, and your atmospheres is platform 3 in travel, right? So all you're doing is you're indicating position lines of calculation system. So 5 times 1 equals 6. Now that 1 stays in position, right? Okay, so again, 5 set position times in track location, right? So it's an Xbox location of setting. So you're Xboxing 1, Xboxing 2, Xboxing 3 in your game system, right? In travel. 3 graphs, communication lines, and data formation lines, extreme adaptation lines of surface attractions, right? So 5 times 1 equals 5. 5 times 1 equals 6, right? So that's like 5 lines equation of travel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, add line condition of 6, and add a line set location of 6. Set locations. So 5 times 1 equals 12 in track location. Okay? That's how this all works in platforms, guys. Very powerful stuff through formula equations. Okay? Now you understand the indications, where you have to understand how to become your own formula and your own equations through your own programmers of programming. You see how it works with the Earth? You see how it works with the powers? And you see how it works with the atmospheres of your highways? The highways can be a 4-track or a 5-track division lines of cycles. Let's go through metric meters and scales. Let's go through 5 times 1 equals 5,000. It's past the atmospheres, right? It's in the highways now. So you're working with 5,000 levels of line signature, line screen location settings. 5,000 line signatures and data formation location your highways. Interactions. 5,000. All through 4 signals, not just in one platform, not just 2 platforms, all 4 platforms. Track to its communication lines, cross line condition setting, all process calculations. And you just go higher and higher and higher. So get out of 5, get out of 50 times 1. Okay, so your higher lines of division now, they're higher lines of highway. Your higher lines of division, right? Your higher lines of galactic, you're in Ethereum, you're in position lines in Mecha universe location, you're into correlation lines of track calculation, another universe location, and the planets. But this is what it is once you get out of the atmospheres. You go in your inginents. An inginent line condition setting is an individual line screen that puts lines of communications how to use your calculation modification of your prime numbers, getting lines of odd and even, trackification, positive and negative. Process communication lines of all calculate modify, setting lines of expansion and track location. Okay? Done by equation. All right. So I think we'll stop there. But I just want to show you exactly how that works now with the Earth, the power, and the atmospheres. Okay, so you get a little bit more understanding, or you have to understand how to use it through your tesseracts. A tesseract can be anything of formation, location, or cube. Right? It crosses line signals, but it understands the grounds, it understands its powers, understands its atmospheres, and understands its highways, and a 4-track location. What do you have in line communication? A pyramid of activation, right? Which is your Merkaba. Hooah! Split lines of anomaly. Travel line, rotation surface, and line condition setting, high process location, constellation screens, and direct signals. Modificates the platforms and travels and line position locations. Crosses line and adaptation lines of surface set location and platforms and line condition setting to A, B, C, D, E, and F, and G in set location. All through travel. Okay? So everybody blown away now? They really understand how to use that now in all ways and forms. How to use the Earth, how to use the powers, the atmospheres, and your highways and track locations. See you in 5.